Have you ever seen someone so determined that the rules couldn't hold them back? A moment where every eye in the room shifted because they knew they were witnessing history. This isn't just another story from the firing range. This is about a 12-year-old girl who walked into a world built for the toughest warriors on Earth and refused to stand behind the line. She wasn't on the list. She wasn't even supposed to touch the rifle. But what happened in the next few hours would leave seasoned Navy SEALs speechless, commanders shaking their heads in disbelief, and an entire base rethinking what it means to belong. Because when you have heart, discipline, and the courage to step forward when everyone else is stepping back, you can rewrite the rules in real time. And that's exactly what Emily Carter did. This is the story of how a little girl, denied her spot on the range, went on to make SEAL history. Before we begin, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your country in the comments so we can see how far this story travels. The wind carried the faint scent of gun oil and sun-baked dust across the naval training range, where rows of rifles rested neatly on wooden racks and paper targets fluttered in the late afternoon breeze. Navy instructors moved with clipped precision, shouting commands over the sharp cracks of live rounds. And at the very edge of the activity stood a girl so small she looked like she had wandered in from a schoolyard rather than a military installation. Her name was Emily Carter, 12 years old, wearing an oversized ball cap that nearly swallowed her head and a faded T-shirt with the words "My Dad, My Hero" across the front. The cap had belonged to her father, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Carter, a Navy SEAL who never came home from his last deployment. She held it on her head as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. Emily had been brought to the base by her uncle, Sergeant Tom Willis, a range safety officer who had agreed to let her watch the afternoon drills. Her father's old teammates had been reluctant but polite, offering small smiles and awkward nods. Some kept their eyes down, others stared a little too long, as if trying to find pieces of Daniel's spirit in her small frame. But Emily wasn't here just to watch. She had one goal, one request, one thing she'd been building up the courage to ask for since she'd learned they were coming to the range. She wanted to fire her dad's rifle, the very same model he had carried through missions that would never make the news. When she finally stepped up to the edge of the firing line and looked up at Commander Bryce Holloway, the man running the day's training, her voice wavered, but didn't break. "Sir, I'd like a chance to shoot, please." Holloway was a tall man, built like the oak trees lining the edge of the parade ground, his face carved into hard lines by years of combat and command. He glanced down at her, then at Tom, and the faintest smile of disbelief crossed his lips. "This is not a playground, kid, and you're not on the list. Go back and watch from behind the line." Emily's fingers tightened around the brim of her cap, her cheeks warming, but she held her ground. "I can do it. I've practiced with Uncle Tom. I know the safety rules." Holloway shook his head and turned away, the conversation already over in his mind. The sting of rejection hit Emily harder than she expected. The laughter from a couple of younger SEAL candidates nearby felt like a slap. One of them, a broad-shouldered man named Carter Briggs, muttered something about toy guns and tea parties. Another, Ray Delgado, smirked and said maybe she could help set up targets instead. Uncle Tom put a hand on her shoulder, his grip steady. "Let it go. They don't know what you can do." But she wasn't ready to let it go, not yet. Every step she took back to the bleachers felt heavier, but inside, something had been lit, a steady, hot burn that refused to go out. Hours passed. The sun sagged lower in the sky, and the range began to empty. Holloway was reviewing the day's scores when a call came through. An unexpected high-profile demonstration was needed for visiting dignitaries from the Department of Defense. The SEAL team was short-handed, and they needed someone to run the most complex shooting course on the base. Tom overheard the request, and without thinking twice, he spoke up. "Commander, I have someone who can do it. Holloway gave him a flat stare. I'm not putting a child in front of the brass. Tom's jaw clenched. She's not just a child. She's Daniel Carter's daughter, and she can outshoot half the recruits you've got here. Holloway looked like he was about to shut it down again when a voice cut through from behind, deep and steady. Give the kid a shot, it was Master Chief Owen Briggs, a legend in the teams, long retired, but visiting for the week. His word carried weight more than Holloway liked to admit. If Owen said she deserved a try, it was hard to argue. Holloway sighed. Fine, one run, no live ammo until I see her on dry fire. If she makes a single safety mistake, she's off. Emily stepped forward, heart pounding, the same burn in her chest flaring brighter now. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to waste it. Asterisk. Emily walked up to the line, the gravel crunching under her sneakers. Her small frame almost swallowed by the oversized tactical vest Tom had dug out from storage. It smelled faintly of her father's aftershave and the range dust of years past. Her fingers brushed over the stock of the rifle, the cold metal grounding. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, from the skeptical recruits to the stern-faced Holloway. And somewhere in the crowd, Owen Briggs stood with his arms folded. Watching without a hint of expression, Tom crouched beside her, whispering the same words Daniel used to say before every drill. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Trust your breathing. Holloway ran her through the safety checks, his tone sharp, professional, expecting her to falter. But Emily's hands moved with quiet precision. Chamber clear, safety on, muzzle awareness locked. When he called out the dry fire sequence, her stance was perfect. The trigger squeezed steady, not a twitch. Out of place, a few of the watching SEALs exchanged surprised glances. But no one said a word. Holloway's voice shifted ever so slightly, less dismissive now. Load it up, he said, and Emily felt the weight of the live rounds, as if they carried her father's voice inside them. The course was a nightmare, even for seasoned shooters, a mix of stationary and moving targets, long-distance shots followed by rapid transitions, tight corners where seconds meant everything, and the most infamous obstacle of all, the pop-up hostage target that could sink your score in an instant. Emily inhaled, exhaled, and then the buzzer blared. She moved like water, her small size making her fast around the barricades. Her sight picture crisp, each shot ringing out. Clean and true, brass casings tumbled into the dust like golden raindrops. The rhythm of her breathing matched the steady thump of her heart. Halfway through the course, a tricky steel target swung into view, one that had rattled even Owen back. In the day, Emily didn't hesitate. Her rifle barked, and the steel sang in reply. The recruits watching went silent. The smirks long gone, Holloway's eyes narrowed, not in doubt, but in a dawning realization that this girl wasn't here to prove a point. She was here to rewrite the room's understanding of what was possible. She cleared the hostage target. Clean, her final rounds punching through the last set with surgical accuracy. Then she slammed the rifle safe and called it. Time, the range timer stopped, and there was a pause, a beat of silence so heavy it seemed to crush the air. Then the score popped up on the board, higher than any of the recruits had managed all. Weak, Emily pulled off her cap, wiping sweat from her brow, and for a moment she looked at the scoreboard not with pride, with quiet, aching longing, wishing her dad could have been there to see it. Owen Briggs stepped forward first, his gravelly voice carrying across the range. Looks like we've got ourselves a Carter back on the board. Holloway didn't smile, but his nod was slow and deliberate, as if granting her entry into a circle she hadn't even been invited to before. Tom crouched again, eyes bright. You did it, Em. But Emily just shook her head softly. Not yet, Uncle Tom. Not until I do it for real. Holloway caught the words, and for the first time, there was something like curiosity in his gaze. For real, huh? Then you'd better be ready for the night course, the one even the brass don't. Get to see. Emily met his eyes without flinching. I'll be ready." The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the range in streaks of deep amber and shadow. Floodlights snapped on one by one, casting long beams across the gravel and steel. The air grew cooler, sharper, carrying the faint hum of the generators, and the occasional metallic clang from a target being reset. The night course wasn't just harder, it was a different beast entirely. No wide-open daylight lanes, no clear view of what lay ahead. This was a maze of blind corners, strobe lights, smoke bursts, and targets hidden in the dark. Designed to disorient, even the most experienced operators, Holloway stood in the control booth, arms crossed, watching Emily as she adjusted the night vision rig that nearly covered her entire face. "You can back out, kid. No shame in it," Emily slid the rig down over her eyes and said nothing. Her silence was louder than any speech could have been. Tom gave her a pat on the shoulder, a squeeze that said more than words, "Be safe, be smart." Owen Briggs took a slow step forward, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "You're not here to prove them wrong anymore. You're here to prove yourself right." The buzzer shrieked, and Emily moved, the green glow of her night vision painting the world in shades of ghostly light. She kept her rifle tight to her shoulder, her movements smooth and deliberate. The first targets appeared in rapid succession, silhouettes barely distinguishable from the shadows. She tagged each one clean, her mind narrowing to a tunnel of focus. She reached a smoke-filled corridor, the air thick and acrid, every step calculated. A sudden flashbang simulation erupted ahead, white light searing through the green haze. But Emily's training with Tom had prepared her. She dropped to a knee, blinked through the afterimage, and fired up in the booth. Holloway's eyes flicked between her and the digital readout, the seconds ticking down in the gallery. The recruits who had mocked her earlier were now leaning forward, hanging on every move. Delgado muttered under his breath, "She's actually pulling it off." Briggs just kept his arms crossed, silent, but the corner of his mouth twitched upward. Emily reached the final segment, a set of 3 swinging hostage targets. Her rifle barrel moved in perfect rhythm, tagging the threats without a single miss. The final shot rang out just as the timer hit its mark. The scoreboard lit up. She hadn't just beaten the average. She had landed in the top 5 scores ever recorded on that course. A murmur rippled through the gathered SEALs. Part disbelief, part respect, Holloway stepped out from the booth, his boots crunching on the gravel. He stopped in front of Emily, studying her for a long moment. "You've got your father's steadiness, and his fire. You didn't just pass. Tonight, you made history on this range." Emily's chest rose and fell, her hands trembling slightly now that it was over. She thought of her father, of the quiet pride he used to carry, and for the first time that day, she let herself smile. The range was almost empty now, the dignitaries long gone, the floodlights casting pale halos in the drifting dust. Emily sat on the tailgate of Tom's pickup, her legs dangling, a rifle case beside her like a silent sentinel. She traced her fingers over the latch, the weight of the day settling in. It wasn't exhaustion. It was something heavier. Like the moment after a storm when the air is still charged, Tom leaned against the truck bed, sipping from a battered canteen, his eyes never leaving her. "You know, what you did tonight wasn't just skill. It was composure. That's rarer than talent out here." Owen Briggs walked over, his boots slow and deliberate, the kind of stride that carried both the years and the miles of service. He set a small, worn patch on the tailgate. Next to her, the SEAL trident, not new and shiny, but scuffed and weathered, the gold dulled from salt water and time. "This was your father's backup pin. He carried it in his kit, thought it was lucky. He told me once that the trident isn't earned in a single day, but some days show the world you're on the path." Emily picked it up carefully, the metal warm from his hand. Her throat tightening, she turned it over in her palm, feeling the tiny scratches like the lines of a story she'd never fully know. A across the range. Holloway was speaking with a tall woman in a crisp navy uniform, her posture sharp as a blade. She walked toward them, her presence commanding in a way that made even the recruits straighten up. Commander Lexi Rhodes, Special Operations Liaison. She studied Emily for a long moment before speaking. "I've been watching the playback of your runs. You handled those courses like you were born. To wit, we have a civilian demonstration tomorrow for a joint training event. The kind of event that gets broadcast straight to the Pentagon. I want you on that line." Emily blinked, surprised. "I'm just a kid, ma'am." Rhodes didn't smile. "And you're also the only person to run both those courses today without a single safety infraction or missed priority targeton's eyebrows lifted slightly, and Owen grunted something that might have been approval. Holloway said nothing, but the slight tilt of his head was all the permission Rhodes needed. Emily felt the burn in her chest again, that same mix of nerves and fierce determination. She nodded slowly. "Okay, but if I do this, I'm doing it my way." Rhodes raised an eyebrow. "And what way is that?" Emily slid the trident pin into her pocket, gripping it like an anchor. "With my dad's rifle. And for every little girl who's ever been told to step back from the line asterisk." Morning broke over the base with the sharp scent of sea air riding in from the coast, gulls wheeling overhead, and the deep rumble of engines from the nearby docks. The range had been transformed overnight for the joint training event. Fresh targets gleamed under the early sun. Camera crews from the Department of Defense moved between the barricades, and a row of high-ranking officers stood under a canvas awning, their medals catching the light like chips of fire. Emily stood off to the side, helmet under one arm, her father's rifle resting against her leg. She could feel every heartbeat in her fingertips. Commander Rhodes approached, her voice low and direct. "This isn't like yesterday. There will be observers from multiple branches, and you'll be paired with an active SEAL for the course." Emily nodded. "Steady. Who's my partner?" Rhodes glanced toward the staging area, where Carter Briggs, the same recruit who had laughed at her 2 days ago, was adjusting his gear. His expression unreadable, Emily felt a flicker of old heat in her chest, but she swallowed it down. This wasn't about settling scores. Not anymore. They met at the starting line, Briggs shifting uncomfortably before muttering, "Look, kid, I was out of line the other day. Didn't think you'd even get close to the course record." Emily adjusted her gloves. "You don't have to believe in me, just don't get in my way." He almost smiled, but the buzzer was already about to sound. The announcer's voice booming over the PA. "This run will simulate a live hostage rescue scenario, coordinated between 2 operators. Points will be awarded for communication, precision, and time." The buzzer split the air, and they moved as one. Emily taking point to the first set of steel plates, her rifle barking in sharp, controlled bursts. Briggs covering her flank with rapid suppressive fire. Their voices cut through the noise in short commands left clear. Moving, target down, smoke popped ahead, obscuring the next set. Emily dropped to a knee, sighted through the haze, and took out the threat silhouettes without grazing the hostage figures. A near impossible shot at that speed by the halfway mark. The murmurs from the officer line had grown louder, Rhodes standing with her, arms folded, Holloway watching from the tower. His eyes narrowed in concentration. They hit the final obstacle. A rooftop breach simulation with targets at multiple angles. Emily climbed first, Briggs tossing her the breaching tool, her movements smooth and economical, the rifle never wavering. The final shot cracked through the air, and then it was over. The scoreboard lighting up highest joint score of the entire morning session, a full 15 points above the next best team as the applause rolled in. Emily pulled off her helmet, her hair damp against her forehead. She glanced at Briggs, who was shaking his head with a grin. "You're dangerous, kid, in the best possible way." And for the first time since she'd stepped onto the range that first afternoon, she let herself laugh. Quick and quiet, but real. The applause was still echoing when Commander Rhodes stepped forward, her boots striking the gravel with deliberate weight. She addressed the crowd of officers first, her voice carrying across the range. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed precision, discipline, and communication at a level most recruits take years to develop." Then she turned to Emily. "You've earned yourself another run solo this time. Member partner, no backup, just you against the course." Emily felt her pulse spike, the sun climbing higher, the glare now sharp enough to make every target shimmer as crews reset the course. Tom appeared beside her, his brow furrowed. "You don't have to take this. You've already proved your point." Emily shook her head, tightening the strap on her helmet. Dad never walked away from a challenge. "Neither will I." Across the range, Holloway's voice called out over the speakers. "This is the Advanced SEAL Qualifier, designed for seasoned operators. Let's see what happens when someone with heart takes the line." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, a few skeptical chuckles, but more than one officer leaned forward with interest. The buzzer sounded, and Emily surged forward. The course was an unforgiving sequence of shifting targets, flash panels, and precision headshots at long range. The heat radiated off the ground in waves, sweat sliding down her neck under the helmet. She moved through the lanes like she'd been born to it, controlling her breathing, her grip never faltering. Each shot rang out with the clean authority of skill-meeting focus. Halfway through, a mechanical glitch triggered an unscheduled target drop. A civilian silhouette falling into her line of fire. Emily's reflexes kicked in, her finger freezing mid-pull, muzzle swinging away in time. The restraint worth as many points as a perfect hit. Observers under the awning exchanged quick glances, some nodding quietly. The second half of the course threw everything at her: rapid transitions from 200 yards to point blank, moving barricades, and a brutal reload drill. Emily's hands moved with unshakable rhythm, her breathing steady through it all. Then the final two targets appeared, one swinging hostage, one shooter shielded behind partial cover. Emily dropped to prone, angled the rifle, and sent two perfect rounds home. The buzzer cut. Silence followed when the scoreboard lit up. Numbers were undeniable. Emily Carter had not only passed the Advanced SEAL Qualifier, she had shattered the existing record by a margin no one thought possible. Rhodes stepped forward, offering a hand. Emily hesitated before shaking, her grip firm. "You didn't just make SEAL history. You reminded everyone here why we take the line seriously." Holloway gave the smallest nod, the kind that carried more weight than applause, and in the distance, Owen Briggs smiled like a man who'd just seen the past and future meet on the same range. Word traveled fast on a base. By midday, Emily's name was on everyone's lips. From the mechanics in the motor pool to the cooks in the mess hall, the girl who had been told to stay behind the line was now the one every recruit wanted to watch. Yet while the officers and dignitaries had been impressed by her skill, there were whispers among some of the more competitive SEAL candidates, voices low and bitter. "They're just making a show of her. It's all publicity. She wouldn't last in a real pressure scenario." The words weren't loud enough for her to hear directly, but she caught the glances. The smirks traded when they thought she wasn't looking. Tom noticed it too, his jaw tightening, but Emily shrugged it off. If there was one thing her father had taught her, it was that real strength wasn't about answering every doubter. It was about letting results speak louder than arguments. Still, she knew there was only one way to silence the murmurs: by stepping into a challenge that couldn't be brushed off as ceremonial or staged. That chance came sooner than anyone expected. Commander Rhodes approached her in the late afternoon, the golden light of the setting sun turning her uniform buttons into small flashes of fire. "We've been asked to stage a surprise endurance shoot for the closing event. It's optional, but it'll be run under full operational conditions, no rest breaks, timed objectives, and stress factors built into every stage." Emily met her gaze. "I'll do it." Rhodes studied her for a moment, then nodded. Be ready at 1900 hours, the range. Under night conditions was a different world, darkness pressing in from all sides. The air thick with the faint smell of gunpowder. The floodlights replaced by dim red lamps, casting everything in a war zone hue. The course had been expanded into a multi-lane gauntlet that sprawled far beyond the usual perimeter. Emily stood at the start line, rifle ready, heart steady. This wasn't for records. This was for respect. The buzzer erupted, and she launched forward. The first obstacle, a sprint to a distant barricade under simulated fire loudspeakers, blaring the crack of near misses. Smoke drifting low, her boots pounded the gravel. Each breath a measured pull of air. Targets flashed in and out of view. Some requiring split-second friend or foe decisions, others demanding long-range precision. She moved as if she'd trained for this all her life. The discipline drilled into her by Tom, blending seamlessly with the memory of every story she'd ever heard about her father in the field. Halfway through, they threw the curveball, a full sprint uphill to engage a cluster of targets from a prone position. Her muscles burned, lungs clawing for air, but her focus narrowed to a razor's edge. She dropped into position, lined up, and delivered shot after shot, every round finding its mark, despite the tremor in her arms. The crowd was quieter now. No muttering, no smirking, just watching. Waiting to see if the smallest competitor on the course could finish something built to push elite operators to their limits. Emily crested the final rise. Sweat stinging her eyes, her breath ragged but controlled. The last stage of the endurance. Chute loomed ahead, a simulated urban street with multiple hidden shooters, hostages in unpredictable positions, and the constant blare of sirens over the loudspeakers. It was chaos by design, meant to overload the senses. She forced herself to slow for half a beat, just enough to reset her breathing. Remembering her father's mantra, don't rush the shot, ownage, she moved into the first alley, shadows twisting under the dim red lamps. A hostile target popped from behind a dumpster. 2 quick rounds dropped it. She pivoted, checking every angle. A flash of movement at her right, but it was a hostage silhouette. She sidestepped, adjusting her aim to take out the hidden shooter in the doorway behind. Her boots scuffed against broken gravel. Every step deliberate, the pressure of time a constant drumbeat in her chest. At the halfway point of the final lane, the instructors had laid their cruelest trap, a low-light section, where 3 hostile targets were interspersed with 5 hostage silhouettes, spaced so tightly that a single rush trigger pull could end the run. Emily steadied herself, night vision glow flickering across her lenses. She could feel the sweat sliding down her temples, could hear the distant murmur of the crowd holding its breath. 1 shot, pause, 2nd shot, pause. The discipline in her movements was surgical. She cleared the final corner with only seconds to spare, the last hostile target swinging across her. Lane like a pendulum, she tracked it, exhaled, and fired just as the buzzer screamed. The range fell silent, her rifle still shouldered as she waited for confirmation. The scoreboard lit up with a score, not just passing, but one of the highest endurance run completions in the base's history, beating several active SEAL operators' times from earlier that year. The applause this time was different, louder, sharper, and without the hesitation of politeness. Briggs was the first to step forward, slapping a hand on her shoulder. I take back every word, kid. You've got steel in you. Holloway gave a small nod from the sidelines, and Rhodes allowed herself the faintest smile. Tom's voice was steady, thick with pride. You didn't just earn their respect, Em. You made sure. They'll never look at the line the same way again. By the next morning, the base was buzzing like a stirred hive. Word of Emily's runs had reached far beyond the range, filtering through mess halls, offices, and even the officers' club. People who had never met her spoke about her as though they had watched every second firsthand. Yet for Emily, the noise faded to the background. She sat at a corner table in the cafeteria with Tom, quietly eating scrambled eggs, her father's trident pin resting beside her tray. To her, the only thing that mattered was what came next. Commander Rhodes found her there, sliding into the seat opposite. No small talk, no hesitation. "There's a reason we pushed you so hard yesterday," she said, leaning in slightly. "We have a civilian outreach program this weekend, designed to inspire the next generation of recruits. The event will include a precision shooting exhibition with operators from multiple branches, and I want you as the headliner." Emily paused, her fork midair. "You're serious?" Rhodes nodded. "Completely. This isn't about proving yourself anymore. It's about showing others what's possible." Tom looked at Emily with a mix of pride and caution. "This is going to be bigger than anything you've done so far. Cameras, press, and every eye locked on you." Emily met his gaze, her voice steady. "Then I'll make sure they see the right thing." Rhodes outlined the details. The exhibition would be run in front of a massive crowd, complete with live commentary, split-screen footage of the targets, and a countdown clock that would track every move. And there was one more thing: Emily wouldn't be alone on the course this time. She'd be running it in tandem with one of the most decorated SEALs still in active service. When Rhodes named him, Emily felt her pulse jump. Lieutenant Mason Holt, a man whose reputation was the stuff of stories told in hushed voices in barracks. His precision was legendary, his discipline unmatched. Holt had agreed to the pairing on one condition: that they run the course as equals. No handicaps, no staged moments. Emily's mouth went dry, but she nodded. "I wouldn't want it any other way." Tom leaned back in his chair, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You realize you're about to run with the best." Emily picked up her trident pin, turning it over in her hand. "Then I'd better be better than my best asterisk." The exhibition day dawned bright and sharp, the kind of morning where the air felt charged with something electric. Bleachers lined the edge of the range, packed with families, veterans, recruits, and more cameras than Emily had ever seen in one place. Banners from every branch fluttered overhead, the sun glinting off polished metals on the uniforms in the VIP section. And right at the center of it all stood the course, a sprawling labyrinth of obstacles, targets, and time challenges designed to showcase nothing less than perfection. Under pressure, Emily adjusted her tactical vest, feeling the familiar weight of her father's rifle against her chest. Mason Holt was already at the line, tall, broad-shouldered, his expression calm but razor-sharp. He extended a hand, his grip firm. "You ready to dance, kid?" Emily's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "Only if you can keep up." A spark of amusement flashed in Holt's eyes before the announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our demonstration team, Lieutenant Mason Holt and civilian precision shooter Emily Carter." The crowd erupted, but the noise melted away the moment the countdown began. Holt took the left flank, Emily the right. The buzzer snapped through the air, and they were moving, synchronized without a single wasted motion. Holt clearing long-range steel with a fluid grace that came from years of repetition. Emily slicing through the close-quarters lanes like she was reading the course from memory. Their voices cut short and precise overcomes. 2 down, moving left, clear, next lane, switch midway through. The announcer's tone shifted, pointing out that they were on track to break the all-time demonstration record. Emily didn't let it rattle her. If anything, it sharpened her focus. She mirrored Holt's pace, matching his reload speed, adjusting her angles to cover his blind spots without hesitation. When the final sequence came, a split rooftop breach where each had to hit a moving target in perfect sync. They lined up without even a glance at each other. 2 clean shots cracked out as one, the steel ringing in unison. The buzzer cut, and the scoreboard lit with numbers so high the crowd gasped before erupting into cheers. Holt glanced at Emily, his voice carrying enough weight to cut through the roar. "You've got the steadiness of a pro and the instinct of a natural. Keep going, and you'll be more than just a story on this range." Emily's smile this time was unguarded, her gaze sweeping the stands where she spotted Owen Briggs, Holloway, and Tom watching her like they were witnessing something more than just a score, like they were seeing a legacy take root in real-time asterisk. After the cheers faded and the crowd began to spill from the bleachers, Rhodes called Emily and Holt into the command tent, the canvas walls rippling in the coastal wind. Inside, a table was scattered with range maps, target schematics, and a laptop streaming the playback of their run. Rhodes tapped the screen, freezing. The moment where Emily and Holt's final shots hit in perfect unison. "This isn't just a good run," she said. "This is the kind of footage that gets replayed for years." Holt nodded, his gaze steady on Emily. "She's not riding on my skill. She's running her own race. And it's faster than most." I've seen Tom stepped in from behind, clearly having caught the tail end of the conversation. "So what happens now?" Rhodes leaned back slightly, her eyes narrowing as though calculating. "We've got a week before the Joint Branch Skills Challenge. Every unit sends their best. And while Emily isn't officially enlisted, I have the authority to enter her as a civilian competitor." The room went quiet. Holt raised an eyebrow. "That challenge isn't for the faint of heart-long course. Multiple weapon systems, and a mental endurance segment that's broken trained operators." Rhodes gave the faintest smile. "And it's a good thing we're not sending just anyone." Emily felt the weight of their eyes on her, the challenge settling on her shoulders like the tactical vest she wore. She glanced at Tom, who gave her a slow nod. "You don't have to do this, Em. But if you do, you go in with your eyes wide open." Emily ran her thumb over the trident pin in her pocket, feeling every scratch and dent. "I want in." Rhodes didn't look surprised, just satisfied. "And you'd better be ready to train like you've never trained before the next days became a blur of drills." Holt, putting her through movement sequences so tight her muscles screamed. Rhodes overseeing mental conditioning sessions where she had to identify threats from split-second images. Tom pushing her endurance runs until her legs burned and her lungs felt raw. Every night she fell asleep, hearing the echo of gunfire in her head, and every morning she woke with that same fire in her chest, the one that had first sparked when Holloway told her to step back from the line. Only now it burned hotter, steadier, and with purpose asterisk. The morning of the Joint Branch Skills Challenge arrived under a pale sky, the air cool and still, like the base itself was holding its breath. The event sprawled across multiple ranges and training zones, each designed to push a competitor to their breaking point. Banners marked the starting area where Marines, Army Rangers, Air Force Pararescue, and Navy SEAL operators stood in full kit. The murmurs began the moment Emily stepped into line. Her ball cap pulled low, rifle slung at her side. Some faces showed curiosity, others skepticism, and a few held that sharp edge of doubt. She had grown used to seeing Holt, joined her at the staging point, not as a partner this time, but as her coach. He leaned in slightly. "Remember, this isn't about beating them at their game. It's about playing yours so well they can't ignore it." Rhodes passed by, her clipboard under one arm, giving Emily a quick nod. Tom was somewhere in the crowd, his arms crossed, eyes locked on her like he could will his steadiness into her bones. The opening buzzer cracked through the air, and they all competitors surged forward into the first zone. A grueling obstacle sprint, followed by rapid-fire long-distance shooting. Emily kept her pace measured, her breathing smooth, letting the fastest sprinters burn themselves out. She reached the shooting platform with her heart rate steady enough to make each shot count. Steel plates at 400 yards fell one after another, the spotter calling her hits with barely concealed surprise. The next zone forced competitors into close-quarters combat simulation, moving through tight corridors where targets appeared and vanished in an instant. She pivoted cleanly, her rifle moving as though it were an extension of her arm. She cleared the section without a single penalty, the scoreboards lighting with her name climbing higher in the ranks. A ripple of murmurs swept through the gathered officers watching from the control tower. By the time she hit the endurance carry, a brutal sequence of hauling a weighted dummy across uneven ground, Emily's legs were screaming, but her grip stayed solid, her focus locked forward. She could hear Holt's voice somewhere in the distance, steady and calm. "You're still in it, Carter. You're still in it." And with each step she took, she felt the weight of her father's trident in her pocket, pressing like a reminder against her leg. A silent promise that she would carry through to the very last shot. The final half of the challenge loomed ahead, a section known simply as the Gauntlet, whispered about even among the most seasoned operators. It was a seamless blend of mental and physical endurance, long-range precision shooting, sudden sprint bursts, obstacle climbs, and a memory recall test buried deep in the sequence. Designed to test a competitor's ability to stay sharp under exhaustion, Emily tightened her grip on her rifle, feeling the sweat on her palms. Despite the cool morning air, the first segment of the Gauntlet opened with a 600-yard prone shot. Crosswinds flicking at the flags along the range. She adjusted for drift without hesitation. The crack of her rifle, followed by the satisfying clang of steel, the spotter calling hit in a tone that had shifted from neutral to impressed. She rolled smoothly to her feet and sprinted to the next checkpoint, her small frame weaving through the heavy sandbag barricades with an agility the larger operators couldn't match at the obstacle wall. She caught sight of two competitors ahead, struggling to pull themselves over, their strength slowed by the weight of their gear. Emily didn't have that bulk. She used momentum instead, planting one boot on a lower rung and launching herself up and over in a single fluid motion. The crowd roared from the sidelines, voices blending into a wall of sound, but she didn't let it pull her focus. The memory recall station came next. A table set with a dozen small items under a tarp. She had 30 seconds to memorize them before moving on to another section and calling them out from memory at the finish. She locked each item into her mind compass: watch, folded map, dog, tags, penknife, flashlight before sprinting on, her boots pounding the gravel, her breath measured and deep. The next shooting lane was a mix of moving and partially obscured targets, each requiring a different approach. She cleared them without a miss by the time she reached the last checkpoint. Before the finish, her legs were trembling, but her aim was steady. She raised the rifle, squeezed the trigger, and dropped the final steel plate, the buzzer cutting through the air. Holt's voice came from somewhere close, low and even. "That was clean, Carter, very clean." She pulled off her cap, brushing damp hair from her eyes, and for the first time since the challenge began, she allowed herself to glance up at the scoreboard. Her name was in the top 3, among operators twice her age and with years more experience. The crowd around the scoreboard was buzzing, operators exchanging looks that ranged from grudging respect to open admiration. Emily stood a few paces back, her hands on her knees as she caught her breath. She didn't need to hear the words to know the whispers had changed. No more, you should just hear for show. Now it was, how did she do that? Commander Rhodes stepped into the open, her voice carrying without a microphone. Carter, front and center. Emily straightened, stepping forward as the gathered competitors and spectators made space roads face the group. Today you all witnessed something rare, not just technical skill, but composure, adaptability, and precision under sustained pressure. She turned slightly toward Emily. That is what makes a shooter. Whether they wear the uniform or not. Holt came up beside her, his arms crossed. I've been on more ranges than I can count, and I've never seen someone this young handle the gauntlet like that. It's not a fluke. It's discipline. Tom pushed his way to the front, pride and relief written across his face. You carried yourself like your father would have, Em. And I've known him long enough to say he'd be proud. Emily swallowed hard, the trident pin in her pocket pressing into her palm like a heartbeat. She met Tom's eyes. Thanks, Uncle Tom. But I'm not done yet. Rhodes gave a knowing smile. I had a feeling you'd say, as she turned back to the crowd. Next week, the top scorers from each branch and one civilian will compete in the invitational finals. Emily Carter has earned that civilian slot. The words hung in the air for a beat before the applause broke out. Holt leaned down slightly, low enough for only her to hear. This next one's not about proving you belong. It's about showing them. You can lead from the front. Emily nodded, feeling the weight of the challenge settle in alongside the fire that had carried her this far. She was ready for whatever came next. The days leading up to the invitational finals felt different. The base had shifted from casual curiosity about Emily to a hum of anticipation. Every training run she did drew quiet observers, not just recruits, but seasoned operators studying her form, testing her focus with sudden noises or unexpected obstacles. And each time she met their eyes afterward, steady and unshaken. Tom kept her schedule tight: early mornings on the range, midday endurance work, evenings spent reviewing course layouts and tactical scenarios. But it was Holt who added the final edge to her preparation one evening. As the sun bled red across the water beyond the base, Holt walked her through a mock course built in the backlot. No targets, no timers, just movement drills, decision-making under stress, and mental resets. "You've got the mechanics down," he said, stepping beside her. "Now it's about owning the space. You have to move like every inch of the course belongs to you." Emily nodded, sweat dripping from her chin, replaying the advice over and over in her head. When the day of the finals arrived, the atmosphere was charged. A temporary stadium had been set up around the course, bleachers packed with service. Members from all branches, television crews stationed along the perimeter, and a commentary team calling each run for the broadcast. The competitors were lined up at the start, each in full tactical kit, weapons checked and cleared. Emily stood among them, her ball cap shadowing her eyes, her father's trident pin clipped to her vest this time, visible for everyone to see. Announcer's voice boomed. "Our civilian competitor today needs no introduction. Emily Carter, whose performances last week made SEAL history." The applause hit her like a wave, but she didn't let it shake her. The buzzer blared, and she moved. The first section, a combination of sprint lanes and angled steel targets. The timing tight enough to punish hesitation. She flowed through them like she'd been there 100 times. Each shot crisp, each transition seamless by the second checkpoint. She'd made up time on competitors who had started faster, her smaller frame letting her navigate a crawling tunnel quicker than the rest. She emerged with dirt on her elbows, but her focus unbroken. Holt's voice echoed faintly from the sidelines. "Keep that rhythm, Carter. Don't chase. Let them come back to you." She did exactly that, pacing herself for the hardest part still. To come, the live scenario village waiting beyond the next barricade. The Leave Scenario Village loomed ahead, a tight cluster of mock buildings with shadowed doorways and narrow alleys, each corner a potential ambush, each window a possible threat. The roar of the crowd dulled in Emily's ears as her focus tunneled. She slipped into the first alley, rifle raised, clearing the left side before sweeping the right. A hostile target popped from a second-story window. 2 quick shots, and it was down before the swing completed. She advanced deeper, the scenario shifting rapidly, strobe lights flickering to simulate disorienting conditions. A hostage silhouette appeared between 2 shooters, the window of opportunity less than a second. Emily's breathing slowed, her trigger squeezed smooth, the round hitting clean without touching the hostage. The crowd gasped at the precision, the commentators calling it one of the cleanest shots of the event so far halfway through the village. She encountered the most unpredictable challenge, yet moving civilian figures, crossing her path while hidden threats opened fire from multiple angles. She adjusted her movement, using a half-step rhythm to keep scanning without losing her line of sight. A target popped behind a trash bin to her left, another from a rooftop to her right. She dropped both with surgical speed, shifting positions. To avoid being flanked, the final building was the most dangerous. Designed to force a breach under simulated fire, she kicked through the door, clearing the front room in under 3 seconds, then climbed to the loft for the last set of targets, her shots cutting through the noise until the buzzer finally split the air. She lowered her rifle, chest heaving, the scoreboard already lighting. Up she was in the top 2, within striking distance of the win. Holt caught her eye from the sidelines and gave a slow, approving nod, the kind that meant she'd just crossed another line in his book from promising to proven. Asterisk, the course officials reset the village for the final round, the one that would decide the invitational champion. Emily stood at the start line, helmet off for a moment, the cool air against her damp hair. She glanced down at her father's trident pin clipped to her vest, her fingers brushing it like a silent promise. Holt stepped up beside her, not as coach now, but as someone who knew exactly what this moment meant. Win or lose, you've already done more than most will in a lifetime. But if you want it, you have to take it now. Emily's eyes locked on the course ahead. I didn't come here to watch someone else finish first, the buzzer screamed. And she was moving, this time faster than before, her body knowing the course as if it were part of her own muscle memory. The first stretch of angled steel targets fell in rapid succession, her rhythm flawless. She cut corners tighter, her transitions smoother, conserving every second. In the crawling tunnel, she shaved off more time, emerging in one fluid motion, straight into the urban village. The crowd sensed it. Her pace was different, sharper, more aggressive without losing precision. She cleared the first 2 buildings in record time, her shots clean, her movement like water. Then came the trap, a sudden target malfunction that left a steel plate swinging erratically in a narrow alley. She read the pattern in a heartbeat, timed the swing, and fired. Steel rang true, a plate dropping before it could swing back into line of sight. As she neared the final breach, she knew the clock was tight, the top competitors, time hanging just ahead of hers. She hit the door with full force, clearing the lower floor in 2 blinks, then bolted up the loft ladder. The last 2 targets appeared, one moving hostage, one shooter in partial cover. Her reticle tracked. 2 shots cracked almost as one. The buzzer blared, and she froze, chest rising and falling, eyes snapping to the scoreboard where the numbers climbed and locked. She had done it by less than half a second. Emily Carter was the Invitational Finals champion. Asterisk. For a moment, the stadium was silent, a kind of pause where reality needs a second to catch up. Then the sound hit like a wave. Cheers, applause, shouts of her name rolling across the bleachers. Emily stood there, rifle lowered, the scoreboard still glowing with her time. Top of the list, Holt was the first to reach her, his hand on her shoulder. That, Carter, is how you finish. Rhodes followed, a rare broad smile on her face. You just made history twice in the same month. Tom pushed through the officials, his eyes glassy but proud, wrapping her in a quick, fierce hug. Your dad would be grinning from ear to ear, right? Now the announcer's voice boomed over the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, your invitational champion, Emily Carter, the youngest competitor to ever hold this title. The medal was placed around her neck, heavier than she expected, the gold warm from the sun. She reached up to touch it, feeling the weight settle alongside the trident pin on her vest. 2 symbols from 2 different worlds, now tied together in her story. As the crowd began to filter out, reporters pressed forward, shoving microphones toward her, asking about her training, her win, her future. Emily answered each question simply, without ego. I came here to do my best, and I wanted to honor my dad and everyone who ever stood. On this line, Holt stood off to the side, watching, his expression somewhere between pride and curiosity, as if wondering where she would take this momentum next when the interview's wrapped. Rhodes called her over one last time, lowering her voice. This doesn't have to be the end, Carter. There are programs, opportunities, even scholarships for someone with your skill and discipline. Emily thought for a moment and smiled faintly. Maybe, but right now, I just want to keep learning, keep shooting. Rhodes nodded. The kind of nod that promised the door would stay open whenever she was ready to walk through it. Asterisk. That evening, the base was quieter. The echoes of the day's cheers replaced by the low hum of generators and the distant crash of waves against the shore. Emily sat on the tailgate of Tom's pickup again, just like that first afternoon. The medal resting on her lap, the trident pin beside it, she turned them over slowly in her hands, feeling the ridges and edges, the weight of what they meant. Tom leaned against the side of the truck, his voice calm. You know, Em, medals and records fade, but what people remember is how you carried yourself. You showed them heart, and that lasts longer than any scoreboard. Owen Briggs joined them, moving with that unhurried gait of a man who'd seen decades of service. He took the medal from her hand for a moment, studying it before placing it back gently. I've known a lot of shooters, Carter, but not many who made the line feel different. You did that, not because you're young, not because you're a surprise, but because you made every shot count like it mattered. Emily looked at him, quietly absorbing the words, then picked up the trident pin and clipped it back onto her vest. The sun dipped lower, streaking the sky in gold and purple. Holt appeared from the shadows of the hangar. Still in his gear, he didn't say much, just handed her a small black range book. Here, every run I've logged for the past 5 years. Thought you might want to add your own. Emily took it, flipping through the pages filled with neat handwriting. Scores, win notes, target patterns. It's yours now, Carter. Fill it up, and when you do, maybe pass it on to someone else who needs it. Emily looked at the medal, the trident, and the book, and for the first time all day, she let the thought settle in, not just what she had done, but what she might do next. The range lights flicked on in the distance, casting long shadows across the gravel, and she knew deep down that this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the first chapter. Asterisk. The next morning, Emily woke before the sun, the medal hanging from her bedpost, the trident pin resting on the knitstand, and the range book Holt had given her open to a blank page. She sat there for a moment, pen in hand, and wrote the date, the location, and 3 simple words. First day forward. The base was still quiet. When she stepped outside, the chill of dawn brushing her face, Tom was already at the truck, sipping coffee from a dented thermos. You're up early, he said. Emily shrugged with a small smile. Gotta keep moving. They drove to the range in silence, the horizon slowly catching fire with the sunrise. When they arrived, no one else was there. The air smelled faintly of salt and powder, and the target stood in perfect stillness. Emily walked to the firing line, set her gear down, and adjusted her stance, the weight of the rifle settling into her shoulder like it belonged there. Her breathing was steady, her focus clear. Each shock rang out into the empty morning, echoing across the base like the sound of something new taking shape. By the time the first other shooters arrived, she had already logged her first entry in the range book, each score neatly written, each note precise. Tom glanced over her shoulder and chuckled. You really are your father's daughter, aren't you? Emily didn't answer, just smiled faintly, sliding the pen back into the spine of the book. She clipped the trident pin to her vest and set up for another round, because records could be broken, medals could be lost. But skill and discipline, those were hers to keep. As the sun rose higher, casting gold light over the gravel and steel, she felt it again, that same steady burn that had carried her from the bleachers to the top of the scoreboard. Only now, it was stronger, deeper. A part of her, Emily Carter, the little girl once denied a spot on the range, had made SEAL history. But more importantly, she had claimed her place on the line, and she knew she would never step back from it again.